All right, so imagine you're a teenager in the 1960s, just trying to get through life. You've moved around a lot, your parents are always on the road, and you're finally sent to stay with a woman who seems nice enough. Now, what if I told you that this decision, this one arrangement, would lead to one of the worst abuse cases in American history? That's exactly what happened to Sylvia Likens. This story, it's straight up nightmare fuel. So, let's rewind to 1965. Sylvia Likens is a 16-year-old girl from Indiana, just trying to survive with her family constantly moving. Her parents, Lester and Betty Likens, work as carnival workers, which means they're always on the road. And because dragging their kids from town to town isn't exactly ideal, they leave Sylvia and her 15-year-old sister Jenny with a woman named Gertrude Baniszewski, someone they barely know. Now, let's talk about Gertrude for a second, because this lady, absolutely unhinged. She's a 37-year-old single mother of 7 kids living in a rundown, filthy house in Indianapolis. She's broke, her health is terrible, and mentally, not stable. But when Lester Likens meets her, she seems trustworthy enough. She agrees to take care of Sylvia and Jenny for $20 a week, promising them food, shelter, and a stable home. Sounds decent, right? Oh, if only. At first, things seem okay. The girls settle in, and while the house isn't exactly great, they're getting by. But then, the first check arrives late. And Gertrude? She does not handle that well. See, most people, if they don't get paid on time, they call someone, maybe get annoyed. Gertrude? She takes it out on Sylvia. She starts yelling at her, slapping her around, blaming her like it's her fault. And that's just the beginning. Once Gertrude gets it in her head that Sylvia is trouble, she does not stop. Every little thing becomes an excuse to punish her. Eating too much, that's a beating. Saying something wrong, another one. And Jenny, who has polio and walks with a limp, is too scared to step in. And the worst part? Gertrude doesn't just keep this to herself. Her own kids, especially her 17-year-old daughter Paula, start joining in. Then the neighborhood kids. Yeah, you heard that right. Random kids from the neighborhood start coming over just to hurt Sylvia. And it's like some sick, twisted game. At first, it's just name-calling, slapping her around. Then it escalates. Burning, starvation, humiliation. Every single day, it gets worse. And Sylvia? She tries to fight back. She tries to stay strong. But what's coming next, bro? It's beyond anything you could ever imagine. So at this point, Sylvia Likens is trapped in a full-blown nightmare, and there's no way out. What started as just slaps and insults has turned into full-scale torture. And the worst part? Nobody is stopping it. Real quick, if you like this story so far, go ahead and like, comment, and hit that subscribe button. It helps more than you know, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. On Tailscape. All right, back to it. Gertrude Baniszewski, she's lost it completely. She's not just angry anymore, she's enjoying having power over Sylvia. And her kids? They're not just watching, they're participating. And then there's Paula Baniszewski, Gertrude's 17-year-old daughter. This girl, pure evil. She's got her own problems. She's pregnant, she's bitter, and she hates Sylvia for no real reason. And when she realizes she can do whatever she wants without consequences, she takes things even further. At first, it's just constant beatings. Then it turns into denying Sylvia food, literally starving her while the rest of the house eats right in front of her. And if Sylvia tries to take even a crumb, more punishment. But what happens next? It's straight up inhumane. Gertrude gets this twisted idea that Sylvia is dirty and sinful, so she forces her to bathe in boiling water. Like actually pouring scalding hot water on her skin, all while laughing about it. And if Sylvia screams, that just makes it worse. And if you think this is rock bottom, nah, we're not even close. Because Gertrude isn't just doing this herself, she's letting the neighborhood kids join in. Like, imagine being a kid and walking into someone's house, and instead of playing video games or hanging out, you're torturing another human being for fun. And these aren't just older teens. Some of these kids are 10, 11 years old. And they're doing things that are so disturbing, I can't even say them here. One kid, Richard Hobbs, a 14-year-old, gets a red-hot needle and carves words into Sylvia's stomach while she's too weak to fight back. And Gertrude is standing right there, encouraging him. At this point, Sylvia is barely alive. She's too weak to move, her body is covered in burns, bruises, and open wounds, and she's been locked in the basement, alone, starving, and in complete darkness. But even after all of this, she still tries to stay hopeful. She still tries to escape. One night, she manages to get to the front door. She's so close. But before she can make it out, Gertrude catches her, drags her back inside, and tells the other kids she needs to be punished. And the next thing they do? It's something so horrific, so beyond words, that even the people involved would later admit they should have stopped it. Gertrude decides that since Sylvia tried to escape, she needs a punishment that will make sure she never tries again. The kids drag Sylvia upstairs, but at this point, she can't even stand on her own. She's barely conscious, barely breathing, and they're still treating this like a game. They force her onto the ground, and that's when Gertrude gets her bright idea. She tells them to brand her. 14-year-old Richard Hobbs grabs a heated sewing needle and presses it against Sylvia's stomach, carving words into her skin while Gertrude watches like it's some kind of sick entertainment. It takes multiple attempts because Sylvia keeps passing out from the pain. When they finally finish, the words, "I'm a prostitute and proud of it," are permanently burned into her body. Gertrude laughs, tells her she'll never be able to show herself in public again. Sylvia is too far gone to react. She can barely keep her head up. But Gertrude isn't done yet. She hands her a pen and tells her to write a letter saying she ran away, got attacked, and this was all her fault. Sylvia is too weak to hold the pen, so Gertrude forces it into her hand and makes her finish it. When it's done, Gertrude reads it over and smiles like she just pulled off some genius plan, but she still doesn't let Sylvia go. That night, Sylvia tries to whisper something to Jenny, but she can barely speak. Her words come out in gasps. The only thing she manages to say is, "I know you don't want me to die, but I am going to die." The next morning, her body finally gives out. The kids try to force her to eat, but she can't swallow anymore. They try to move her, but she collapses. She's barely breathing, her body shutting down after months of starvation, abuse, and injuries that never healed. When she stops responding altogether, Gertrude tells them she's faking it and dumps water over her head. Nothing. They slap her across the face. Nothing. She's gone. One of the kids panics and runs out of the house to call the cops. Gertrude snaps, yelling after them, telling everyone to get their story straight. But the second the police step inside, they already know what happened. The officers take one look at Sylvia and stop cold. Her body is covered in burns, bruises, deep cuts, her fingers are swollen, her lips are cracked, her ribs are sticking out through her skin. One officer just stands there, shaking his head, speechless. Another kneels next to Jenny and asks, "Did they do this to your sister?" Jenny hesitates for a second, looking at Gertrude, looking at the others, knowing they can't hurt her anymore. She takes a deep breath and says, "Yes." The moment the Likens family finds out what happened, Sylvia's father collapses. He sobs in the middle of the police station, shaking so badly that people have to hold him up. Her mother can't even process it. She just sits there, staring, whispering Sylvia's name over and over. They had no idea what was happening to her because they weren't around. They were traveling carnival workers, constantly moving from town to town, trying to make a living. That's why they had left Sylvia and Jenny in Gertrude Baniszewski's care in the first place. They thought they were doing the responsible thing by giving their daughters a stable home while they worked. They trusted Gertrude. They paid her to take care of their daughter. And now, she's gone. The trial is one of the most horrifying cases the court has ever seen. The jury listens as witnesses describe the months of torture, the way Gertrude encouraged her own kids to treat Sylvia like an object, how she turned it into some twisted group activity. Jurors have to be excused from the courtroom because the details are too disturbing. Nobody can understand how so many people were involved, how so many people let this happen. The verdict is obvious. Gertrude and Paula get life in prison. The others get locked up too, but some of them, they only serve a few years. And the worst part? Gertrude gets out on parole after just 20 years. She walks free, changes her name, and spends the rest of her life pretending she did nothing wrong. Never apologizes, never admits guilt. Just disappears. Sylvia never got justice the way she deserved. But she wasn't forgotten. Her case changed child abuse laws in Indiana, making it easier for authorities to step in when something isn't right. But this should have never happened in the first place. Neighbors heard the screams, teachers saw the bruises, somebody even tipped off the police before it was too late. But nothing was done. And if there's one thing to take from this, it's that staying silent isn't an option, because looking the other way, that could be the difference between life and death. Thanks for tuning in to Talescape. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories where ambition meets chaos and sometimes history.